Okay, this is chapter 4.4 on simple interest. This is kind of fun, but I say that knowing that a lot of times students don't think it's fun right away. We've got an important formula, I equals PRT, principal times rate times interest, and we have to memorize that. We just have to do it. The interest is the I, principal this is the amount of money that you invest, or the amount of money you start with, or the amount of money that you borrow. The principal is the money that you start with. And the rate is also the percentage. And T stands for time. And right now we're going to do it in years. So we're going to do it in years for now. So the rate is the interest, PRT, principal, P, rate, R, percentage, and T for time in years. Okay, so those are important. This is the money. The principal is the money. The interest is the amount you owe or the amount you make after you've invested or borrowed or whatever. And we usually put this percentage in the form of a decimal. So that's important. So if we have 2% interest, that is 0.02 as a decimal. Alright, so example number 1. Let's change here. We got example number 1. They say you put $500, you invest $500 into a savings account. So this is your principal. The principal, $500, goes into your savings account. And you earn 3% interest. Okay, this is your, I know it says interest, but it's your rate. 3% is your interest rate. So interest, if we add this rate, it's easier to remember that it's the R. Per year, what is the interest you've earned after 3 years? So the interest after 3 years, we go ahead and we take what we can and we put it in the formula. We write the formula, I equals PRT. We put in what we can. The principal is $500. The rate is 2%. 3%. Excuse me. So that's 0.03. And the time, I didn't write that down. It says after 3 years. So 3 years. That's time. Okay, so times T times 3. And that equals your interest. I equals PRT. Principal is 500, 3% is the rate, and 3 years is the time. We're going to do time in years. And you just have to punch that into your calculator. 500 times 0.03 times 3. You just have to trust me on this. 500 times 0.03, that's the interest, times 3 equals 45. Okay, so that comes down to interest equals $45. And that's the interest that you make. So that's the first answer. It says, what is your interest earned after 3 years? And then letter B, so this is like A, letter B, they wanted to know what your total is. What's the balance after 3 years? So if you earned 45 and you started with 500, your total, your balance, I'd kind of like this B to look a little nicer. Your balance is your total, or your principal, $500, plus what you made, which is 45, equals $545. Okay, it's not too hard. You have to add them together to get your total. Your percentage just finds what has grown. Okay, so we're just going to do similar things like that all the way through. It's just going to keep on happening. Let's do red instead of brown. The second one says find an annual interest rate. So finding an annual interest rate, we are going to find the rate. So that means that they're probably going to give us everything else. Our formula, I, interest equals PRT, principal times rate times time. Have to learn this. The question says you put $1,000 into an account, so P equals 1,000, that's your principal. The account earns $100 simple interest. So your I, your earnings is $100. That's your interest in 4 years. So the T is 4 years. What is the annual interest rate? So what we don't know is what the interest rate is. That's the R. We don't know what the R is. So we go ahead and we start filling in everything. $100 is our interest, equals $1,000 times our rate, we don't know, that's R, times T, which is 4 years. Alright, so I can multiply 1,000 times 4 in my head. So 100 equals 4,000 times R. So 4,000 R. I can make that look a little better. See, I just multiplied the 1,000 and the 4. And now it looks a little simpler. And I have to go through and I have to solve for R, which means dividing 4,000 divided by 4,000. Alright, so 4,000 over 4,000 is 1. And I can use a calculator. I can remember that when I divide, I can come down to 1 over 40 just in my head. So interest equals 1 over 40. And that is a long division problem. 1 over 40 is the same as 1 divided by 40, which is 0.025. So the interest rate is 0.025, which is the same as 2.5%. All I have to do is multiply by 100 or move the decimal 2 places over. 2.5%. That's not too bad. This is a little harder than the first problem because we have to use algebra to solve for whichever variable happens to be missing. In this case it was the rate. We're probably going to have to do that again. The next example, example number 3, is finding time. So T is the thing that we're going to be looking for. Alright, so the bank offers you 3 savings accounts. The simple interest rate is determined by the principal. How long does it take your account with a principal of $800 to earn $100 interest? So we're going to start with the I equals PRT as usual. And they say that we are putting a principal of $800 in. And they're saying that we're earning $100 interest. So our interest is $100. They're telling us that we don't know what the rate is. Well, it depends. The rate, it gives us several options, and we can see that if we have $800, that our rate is 2%. So the rate is 2%. What we don't know is time, because they're asking how long does it take to earn $100, our interest, if we invest $800. How long does it take us to earn? So we don't know the time. So we're going to use our same formula and we're going to just plug everything in. The interest is $100. Our principal is $800. The rate is 2%, so that's 0.02, and we don't know T. So I'm going to use this little trick that I always use, 800 times 2%. But I'm just going to do 800 times 2. That's something I can do in my head because 8 times 2 is 16 and I keep those 2 zeros. But then I remember that there's 2 decimal places, so I'm going to have to come back 2 decimal places and put 16 in. So 800 times 2% is 16. So this times that is 16, so it's 100 equals 16t. And I can show you that on the calculator just to make sure you believe me. 800 times 0.02 equals 16. Okay, so this gets us closer. We need to divide to try to get t by itself. We're going to divide both sides by 16. 16 over 16 is 1. And that just leaves us t. What's 100 divided by 16? Well, we go back to the calculator. This is the kind of thing you use a calculator for. 100 divided by 16 is 6.25. So 6.25 is the time. So that's a little more than 6 years. You could say it's 6 1/4 years, 6 1/4, 6.25 years. So that's the answer. 6.25 years is how long it'll take to earn $100 interest if you invest $800 at 2% and you just leave it alone. So there we go. One more. Finding an amount paid on a loan. Find an amount paid on loan. Okay, so the important part is that you are learning the formula. Interest equals principal times rate times time. I equals PRT. Alright, so you borrow $600. This time you are borrowing money, so you're not making anything, you're losing money. You want to get something now instead of waiting for later. So you borrow $600. That's still principal. It's still the money that you're starting with, even though you're starting out by owing it. You're borrowing $600 to buy a violin. So P equals 600. The simple interest rate is 15%, which is 0.15. 15%. Okay, you pay off the loan after 5 years, so the time is 5 years. How much did you pay for the loan? So what happens is you pay back the $600, but you also pay back all the interest that the bank or whoever is charging you, and you're paying 15% interest, and you're going to find that it's quite a lot. So we're just going to put this in our equation. The interest, we don't know, is I. The principal is 600 times the rate, which is 15%, times the time, which is 5 years. We're going to go right back to our calculator. 600 times 0.15 times 5. $600 times 15% times 5 years is $450. You might say to yourself, $450? That's less than the $600 I borrowed. Well, it is less, but that's the interest you paid. You still owe the $600. So your total amount paid for the loan includes the $450 plus your principal, which is $600. So your $600 plus your $450 is what you've actually paid for the violin or whatever it is that you're buying. This ends up being $1,050 because 600 plus 400 is 1,000. So 600 plus 450 is 1,050, and that's a lot of money. You got to think about before you go ahead and agree to buy something at 15% interest. That's fairly high. You want to find something at a lower interest rate if you're going to pay for something, because you end up paying a lot more for it.